Desperate dad hands over last 10 at Subway. What happens next will shock you. The fluorescent lights in the subway flickered like a warning sign. The smell of fresh bread hung heavy, mixing with the muffled chatter of hurried customers. A man stood at the counter, his hands shaking. He had a wild look in his eye, desperation carved into the lines of his weathered face. Jack never imagined he'd be handing over his last $10 for a sandwich. But today was different. The clock ticked loudly, each second echoing in his mind like a drum. His stomach growled, a painful reminder of empty months where he barely scraped by. Just across from him, the lady at the register was surging through transactions, oblivious to his turmoil. The tension hung thick, almost dripping from the ceiling like sweat. Just $10, he whispered to himself, but it felt like he was bargaining with fate. Over in the corner, a group of teenagers laughed freely, unaware of real-world troubles. They joked over oversized sandwiches, but Jack couldn't ignore the weight on his shoulders. He could barely breathe, his chest tight. What would he tell his kids when they asked where dinner was? Would they understand why he couldn't bring home more than a meal from a fast food place? It was supposed to be a treat, a moment of joy, but now it felt more like a punishment. Then, a strange noise shattered his thoughts, a loud crash outside. Heads turned. Jack strained to look, heart racing like a runaway train. Was that a scream? The air around him grew thick with uncertainty. The voices faded, and his world narrowed down to shadows and whispers. Was it a fight? Was someone in trouble? Suddenly, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was the manager, visibly concerned. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. But Jack noticed something odd about her. There was fear in her eyes, fear that matched his own. What was going on? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Jack stared out the window again. The street had become a scene in a movie, chaos unfolding in high definition. A figure stumbled into view, clutching something that glinted in the light. Was it a gun? The frenzied shouts echoed like sirens. People inside the subway shifted, the atmosphere electric with fear. Jack's heart raced. He could feel the fear pooling in his stomach, bubbling up like a pot ready to boil. He looked back at the woman behind the counter. She was frozen, caught between the frantic energy of the scene outside and the mundane act of selling sandwiches. The sight of her wide-eyed terror ignited something inside him, a mix of resolve and panic. What would he do? What could he do? As he gripped the $10 bill tightly, a shiver ran down his spine. The world outside his sandwich haven was spiraling, and he was trapped in a moment that would change everything. And then, like a sudden twist in a thriller, he caught a glimpse of that glinting object again. What was it? Was this just the beginning of something much darker? Jack's heart thundered in his chest, each beat a countdown to chaos. The figure outside, dangerously close now, was yelling something. The words were lost in the frantic energy swirling in the subway. Screams erupted, sending a fissure of fear through the air, and it felt like the room had physically shrunk. He turned to the manager, desperation etched on his face. "We need to get out of here," he rasped. But her eyes were glued to the scene unfolding outside, a mix of horror and disbelief. She opened her mouth, probably to argue, but then the sound of glass shattering rang out, cutting through the tension like a knife. Jack's instincts kicked in. They couldn't stay here, not now. But how could he move with his feet rooted to the ground? The $10 in his hand felt like a weight, anchoring him to this moment, to this madness. "We'll have to go through the back," he finally stammered, forcing himself to take action. The manager blinked at him, panic caught in her throat, but as another shout pierced the air, her resolve hardened. "Okay, let us go," she managed, her voice quivering. Just as they turned towards the back of the restaurant, another loud crash echoed behind them. The door burst open, slamming against the wall, and it was as though the world had finally split open. In stumbled a man, his clothes torn and dirty, wild-eyed and frenzied. In his hand was that glinting object, definitely a gun. The air snapped taut with unspoken words. The crowd's breath hitched in unison. Jack's throat went dry as fear clawed at him, threatening to swallow him whole. "Everyone down," the man barked, his voice slicing through the frantic murmurs of terror. The customers, once carefree, now scrambled to the floor, scrambling for cover like ants under a magnifying glass. Jack felt himself reflexively drop, his instinct taking over. He pressed himself against the wall, heart hammering, desperately trying to pull his family into the forefront of his mind. Where were they? What were they doing? The manager crouched beside him, her fingers trembling as she fumbled with her phone. "I'm calling the police," she whispered urgently. Jack wanted to scream at her to wait. What if the man saw her? But before he could voice any of his thoughts, the man turned sharply, eyes blazing with fury. "Touch that phone, and I swear," he sneered, his voice dripping with rage. Jack could barely breathe, a lump forming in his throat. This wasn't just a robbery. It felt personal, a desperate plea for attention, and Jack couldn't figure out why. They were caught in a web of violence, no escape route in sight. A man was about to snap. Jack's mind raced, unable to shake off the sinking feeling. This was about survival now, not just for him, but for everyone in the room. "Stay calm," Jack whispered to the manager who was shaking next to him, her eyes wide as saucers. He fought to suppress his own rising panic as he thought of his kids once more. Their laughter, their innocent faces. They had no idea what was happening outside, or how close danger was lurking just beyond the flimsy walls of this fast food sanctuary. And then, just as the atmosphere hit its breaking point, there was an unexpected sound, an engine roar followed by the screech of tires outside. Was someone intervening? The man reacted violently, spinning toward the window, gun raised, eyes scanning the street. Jack's breath caught again, frozen in place, watching as uncertainty morphed into explosive tension. What was going to happen next? Would they survive the madness? The electric air thickened, and in that moment, Jack could only hope. But hope wasn't all Jack had. In the corner of his eye, he spotted something, a small metal object on the floor, just beneath the register. And he realized, whatever was coming next, he had to act. Would this be the key to turn the tide, or would it cost him everything? Jack's heart raced, and his breaths came in shallow gasps as he weighed the risk of lunging for the metal object. The chaos around him faded into a muffled backdrop, replaced by the thundering pulse of adrenaline. He strained to catch a glimpse of it, a glimmering silver keychain knife. It lay just feet away, but that distance felt like miles. The man with the gun had his back turned to Jack, momentarily distracted by the sounds outside, the sirens drawing closer. He gripped the gun tightly, veins popping along his knuckles, eyes wild. Jack's gaze darted to the manager, whose fear mirrored his own, yet he could see the flicker of resolve buried deep within her. If he was going to do this, he had to move fast. On three, he whispered to her, hoping her heart would match his racing pulse. 1, 2, as he counted, his fingers twitched, yearning to reach for that lifeline. The third count slipped from his lips, and as time seemed to slow, he bolted for the knife. The rush of movement sent shockwaves through the restaurant. Chairs scraped against the floor as frightened customers tried to retreat further into the sanctuary of the walls. Jack dove, hand outstretched, feeling the cool metal of the knife collide against the warmth of his palm. As he landed, the sudden sound of the gun clicked back into focus. "Stop right there." The man's voice sliced through the air, raw and urgent. Jack's heart plummeted as he rolled onto his back, instinctively raising the knife as though it were a shield. The gunman whipped around, shock hammering into his expression. "Don't move," Jack shouted, trying to sound more confident than he felt. His hands trembled, but at that moment, he swore he could feel the weight of survival resting on that little blade. The man's eyes narrowed, realizing he had lost control of the situation. Jack could sense desperation radiating from him, a man on the edge and running on fumes. "You think you can save them? You think that little toy could stop me?" He spat, his voice cracking with rage to end this high-stakes standoff. Time stretched. Jack felt sweat bead down his temples as he fought to keep his hands steady. He desperately searched for any sign of possible retreat, a way to escape this nightmare. Then he spotted a back door just beyond the kitchen, slightly ajar. "Everyone out," he shouted to the gathered crowd, his voice filled with frantic urgency. "This way." People began to scuttle, a collective instinct to flee overtaking fear. Jack, half standing, half crouched, eyed the gunman, who now seemed to realize he was losing his hold. "You think you can just run?" The man hissed, his finger twitching perilously close to the trigger. "Get out!" Jack yelled again. The crowd surged, moving toward the door like trapped animals finally breaking free. But they needed time. They needed a distraction. "Let them go," Jack shouted, barely registering the words as they tumbled out. It was a gamble, a plea more than a strategy, but the moment brought a flicker of hesitation to the gunman's eye. "What do you care about them?" The man fired back, but Jack could see the doubt. Perhaps there was a shred of humanity left in this chaos. "I care more about them than you ever could." Jack shot back, anger piercing the adrenaline haze as he took a step forward, brandishing the knife instinctively. "Let them leave. You don't want to hurt anyone." The words felt like wisps of smoke, fragile yet essential. It was a desperate play, and he knew it. But as the last of the patrons clamored through the door, the atmosphere shifted. Everyone could sense the change. Would he lose everything, or could he somehow stand his ground against a man driven mad by desperation? The gunman glanced at the door, then back at Jack. The world held its breath. And then an engine revved outside, almost drowning Jack's thoughts. Was that a police car barreling down the street? The grip of dread settled back in. What would happen if he didn't let go? What if this confrontation spiraled further? Jack could feel it, the moment of truth bearing down heavily upon them both. All it would take was a single pull of that trigger. As seconds stretched to infinity, Jack stood ready, but every instinct screamed that each choice held the potential for disaster. What would the gunman choose? Would he take the leap into violence? Jack clenched the knife tightly. And just like that, the tension exploded as the door slammed shut behind the last customer. Their fate hinged on a moment, and he could feel the world teetering on the edge of nightmarish chaos. Would Jack's gamble pay off, or would it seal their fate in blood? The gunman's breathing was rapid now, a wild tempo that matched the pounding chaos inside Jack's chest. The restaurant felt small, air thick with sweat and fear, as every set of eyes in the room turned to the gunman and back to Jack, a live wire sparking danger. "Why do you care about them?" The man snarled, his face contorted in confusion and rage. The gun shook slightly in his hand, revealing a fragility that Jack had been silently praying for. Desperation, Jack thought. It could break a man or give him strength. Which would it be? "Because someone needs to," Jack replied, barely recognizing his own voice, taut and fierce. "You don't want this. You can still stop this madness." He couldn't believe the words tumbling out. An involuntary plea, yet he felt them carry the weight of hope. The sirens wailed louder outside, growing closer, filling the silence with the promise of intervention. The gunman's eyes darted toward the sound, a flicker of uncertainty in them. "They made me do this," he suddenly spat, resentful, as if he were a puppet on strings of chaos. "I lost everything. My job, my family, they took it from me." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. Suddenly, beneath the bluster of the gunman, there lay a raw vulnerability. "Your family?" Jack ventured, keeping his stance firm, hoping to pull threads of connection. "What about them? You think they do want this for you?" A moment of hesitation danced in the gunman's twitching fingers. "You don't know anything," he yelled, voice breaking. "I know pain," Jack countered, breathing deeper as he pushed every inch of empathy forward. "I know loss. But this isn't the way. You scream for your family, but what will they think if you become a monster right here?" The gunman's jaw clenched, the rage battling with doubt, primal instincts wrestling in his mind. Jack noticed the sweat glisten on the man's forehead, the way his gun hand trembled. Every passing second heightened the charge, a taut string about to snap. Just then, a loud noise erupted outside, the sound of doors slamming, heavy footsteps marching on pavement. Jack's heart sank. Were police arriving? Could he gamble they'd come in through the multiple entrances nearby? The sudden reality hit him. They needed to get the gunman to surrender before an officer came through. "Don't do this. It won't change a thing," Jack urged, pushing down the quiver in his voice, sensing the moment unraveling with each heartbeat. "You don't have to be alone. Let us talk. There's still a chance to make this right. Make it right." The gunman's voice was low, conflicted, but still carried the weight of hostility. "What would you know about making things right? You don't know me. You don't know what it's like. Jack searched desperately for the right words, something to anchor them in this swirling abyss. He took a breath, recalling his own struggles, his own life blips that had tested him. I might not know everything, but I felt despair too. We all have our moments where we want to erase it all. But trust me, hurting others won't bring back what's lost. I can help you. We can fix this together. Just as he thought he saw a crack in the gunman's resolve, the door jolted violently, catching Jack off guard. The police had arrived. A shadow cast over the scene as footsteps echoed loudly from the other side. Drop the weapon. We know you're in there. The gunman whipped toward the door, panic igniting fresh fury. No, I want to let them take me. You don't understand. Listen to me, Jack shouted, forcing his eyes to lock onto the man's frantic gaze once again. You have the chance to end this. Don't let them make you the monster. It's your choice. The growling tension reached a fever pitch. Would the fear of the unknown drive the man to act irreversibly, or would Jack's appeal reach the remnants of humanity buried beneath the surface? Just as the police announced their final warning, the gunman turned abruptly toward Jack, and time stilled. What would the desperate father do? Would he succumb to madness, or find some inner resolve to save not just himself, but everyone in the room? The gunman's eyes blazed with turmoil, the churning emotions captivating him while he wrestled with Jack's words. For a heartbeat, nothing else existed. The world narrowed to just the two of them, connection a thin thread stretched perilously close to snapping. Just when Jack dared to believe something might shift, the gunman's face distorted under the weight of his choices, but the noise outside thundered in, drowning their moment. Barking commands echoed like rolling waves, crashing down on fragile hope. The gunman's heart raced louder than the sirens, a frantic beat against impending doom. His grip tightened on the weapon, knuckles white, straining against the anxieties clawing at his throat. Give me a reason not to end this now, he shouted, gazing at Jack like a cornered animal ready to pounce. You think you can fix things? You think you know me? I want to let them win. Jack felt himself unravel against the rage aimed at him. You're not a monster, and this isn't what your family would want. He pressed forward, determined to pierce the veil of anger. You're not just a lost cause, you're still here. Fight for what matters. Please. A deep rumble shook the restaurant, vibrating through the floor as more officers arrived, their shouts merging into a chaotic symphony of alarm. Sweat trickled down Jack's back, the stifling air magnifying the tension swirling in the small space. Eyes flitted nervously between the gunman and the entrance, waiting for a break. Shut up. Shut up. The man roared, eyes wild with anguish. The gun clenched tighter, ready to unleash a storm that could obliterate their hope. For every cry of despair that clawed at the air, Jack's desperation surged stronger. Remember them. Your kids. They need you. Don't let them define who you are. Jack's words ignited a flicker, a soft glimmer against the chaos. He could see it, the flickering expression winding through the man's guarded facade, threading doubt and regret into the raw fabric of his fury. There was a heartbeat where the struggle of feeling human clashed with the instinct to protect himself, down to the barrel of that gun. Turn around. Hands up. The commands outside pierced the air like daggers, punctuating the fragile moment. The gunman's face contorted. No, they want me dead, he shouted, shaking, the tremor of his voice revealing vulnerabilities he fought so hard to hide. His gaze darted back to Jack. You don't understand, I'm not going back. Then fight back. Not with that gun, but with your heart. Jack surged forward, his voice grounded and strong, pooling all the conviction he had in him. There's still a way out. Change the ending of this story. Be better than this. The gunman faltered. Jack took a breath, heart pounding, as he edged closer, daring to believe it was working. You're the author of your own life. Write a new chapter. This isn't how your story has to end. The man's hand lowered barely an inch, but it felt monumental. The tension rippled, just a shimmer of possibility brewing in a heart so drenched in despair. But then a deafening crash jolted through the door, sending an electric shock through the air. The noise turned every head, and Jack's gut nodded as he realized they'd breached the entrance. Move away from the door. Get on the ground. Voices screamed in authoritative tones, barking orders that drowned out reason. Jack's blood ran cold. The moment hung like a taut wire, waiting to snap. Stop. Don't hurt them. The gunman yelled, wild panic flooding his senses. The police were prepared to breach, and everything slipped back into a frenzy. Jack's mind raced. Would the gunman act in panic? Would he push them to that point of no return? Listen, don't follow through with this. Jack shouted fiercely as the door buckled open as the officers poured into the room. A moment of indecision reared. Jack's heart raced in sync with the gunman's erratic breathing. What would be the tipping point? It all spiraled down to this one heartbeat as the gunman hovered at the brink of a choice that could erase them all or awaken something long buried. And then, the gunman made a move that no one expected. The gunman lunged toward the window, his emotions unraveling in an unexpected burst of energy. Jack's heart leaped into his throat as he instinctively dropped to the ground. The officers, now inside, froze in confusion, rifles pointed at the man who was no longer aiming the gun at them, but rather at the glass that shattered the tense atmosphere. "What are you doing?" Jack gasped, scrambling to his feet, eyes wide with alarm. "You can't," but it was too late. The gunman kicked the table aside, sending chairs skidding across the floor as he rushed toward the window. The cacophony of breaking glass echoed like an alarm bell, drowning out every voice, every shout. Jack felt a rush of instincts fight within him. Should he rush to pull the man back? Was this the tipping point that would send everything crashing further into chaos? The officers traded frantic glances, their composure wavering as the scene shifted. "Stop! Don't!" one officer shouted, moving to apprehend the gunman. But the man was already halfway to the window. The gunman paused, overcoming by all-consuming desperation. He whirled around, eyes wild, pinning his gaze on Jack. "This is my last chance. There's no coming back." Jack took a step forward, heart pounding, trembling hands raised. "You're wrong. You can still make it right. Just listen to me." He edged closer, sensing time slipping away, each second a tiny eternity in a surreal moment. The gunman's eyes softened. The frantic energy faded, leaving only the stark vertigo of realization. He wasn't just a desperate man. He was a father, lost in a world that felt stitched together by regrets. "You think they'll forgive me?" he whispered, the gun dangling loosely at his side. "Your kids don't want you to be a ghost. They want you to be there for them." Jack's voice cut through the air, a life raft thrown into turbulent waters. "Please," the gunman almost crumpled, the fight draining out of him as he stared into Jack's eyes. Profiled against the chaos, Jack saw a flicker of what the man used to be, someone who could still choose to love over hate, to create rather than destroy. Before another command could be barked, the window shattered under the weight of uncertainty and guilt. A gust of wind shoved Jack back a step, and the momentary respite was replaced by the sickening sound of sirens outside, a chilling reminder of the world still waiting beyond those walls. "Don't make this worse," shouted one of the officers, frantically gesturing for the gunman to lower his weapon, urgency thick and palpable in the air. The gunman's gaze flickered from Jack to the officers, the walls closing in around him. Somewhere in the maelstrom of emotions, a decision began to solidify, weaving through fear and turmoil like a thread of light. But just then, a voice rang out behind him, a cold, authoritative bark that stole the air from his lungs. "We have a hostage situation. Get down on the floor now, or we will use lethal force." The gunman recoiled, eyes wide, disbelief washing over him in waves. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, charging the space with sheer tension. Jack caught the flicker of desperation in his eyes, the struggle between surrender and fight playing out like a tragedy on a stage. In that haunting instant, would he raise the gun again, choosing a final act of defiance? Or would he collapse into the abyss of his choices, allowing Jack's voice to guide him back from the brink? "Please," Jack's voice echoed, filled with raw emotion. "Choose life. Choose them." Time seemed to dissolve, with the fate of many dangling on the edge, suspended precariously as sweat dripped down Jack's brow. And then, against the backdrop of chaos, the gunman dropped to one knee, the weight of his despair crashing down like a tsunami. But there was still at least one card left to play, and it was about to change everything. Jack held his breath, eyes locked on the gunman. The man's turbulent emotions cascaded through the room, each heartbeat echoing like thunder. And then, as if time had folded in on itself, the gunman slid the gun away from his reach, landing with a clatter on the ground, a resignation crumbling him. Instantly, the tension in the air shifted, morphing from a fearful standoff to a reluctant sigh of hope. Jack dared to breathe again. The officers, caught off guard by the sudden capitulation, took slow, tentative steps closer, rifles still raised but fingers hovering cautiously over triggers, ready but unsure. "Get down on your stomach," barked one officer, voice firm, but Jack could hear the pulse of uncertainty beneath it. "No," Jack shouted, driven by instinct. "Wait. He's making the right choice. Don't escalate this." His heart raced again, fear clutching his throat as he faced the officers. "He's not your enemy. Everyone down." The officer yelled again, knuckles white around the barrel of his weapon. The atmosphere was thick, electric. The gunman obeyed Jack's plea, lowering himself slowly to the ground, but uncertainty loomed heavily, filling the room with a sense of foreboding. The window lay shattered, a jagged mouth gaping into the chaos outside. Sirens blared, and the scent of adrenaline mingled with the acrid smoke of tension. Jack cautiously approached the gunman, who was now prone, eyes locked on the floor, as if it held the answers to his myriad of questions. "Why did you do this?" Jack's voice trembled, both vulnerability and strength woven into his words. The gunman shifted slightly, pain etched into his features. I thought it was the only way to make them listen." His voice broke, a whisper barely escaping his lips. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." Jack took another step closer, desperation and compassion fighting for dominance in his chest. "I know how hard it is to feel trapped, but this isn't the answer. It doesn't change anything." The man stuttered, eyes glassy as tears pooled at the corners. "They took everything from me. My job, my family, all I have left is the regret." Jack felt the weight of those words resonate painfully, echoing experiences he wasn't ready to confront. "What do you want, really?" he asked, lowering his tone, almost conspiratorial. "If not this, what would you give anything to have back?" The gunman hesitated, emotion fracturing the resolve he'd displayed moments before. "I want to go back to a time when my kids could look at me without fear. When I wasn't this. Then let us find a way to make it right," Jack asserted, his eyes fierce with belief. "A second chance isn't dead. You just have to take it." The nearby officers exchanged startled glances. One hesitated, brow creased in puzzlement, unsure of how to proceed now that the gunman wasn't lunging toward the edge. The stillness between the moments felt heavy, almost unbearable, yet alive. "There's a reason you're here, right now," Jack insisted, voice steadying. "You're here because it's not too late." Suddenly, the chaotic sounds outside turned into a howl. The wind howled through the broken window, rattling the remnants of glass, almost as if the very universe responded to the rhythm of fear and hope. That a loud crack echoed as one officer moved closer, gun still drawn, tightening the knot of tension once more. "Step back. This is a serious situation," he warned, voice laced with urgency. "Please," Jack said, rising to the challenge. "I promise, he is not going to hurt anyone. We can get through this together." Tension built, stretching the moment into taut silence. Jack met the gunman's gaze, fragile yet luminous, a spark of something resembling hope buried in the wreckage of despair. But just then, something unexpected happened. A figure burst through the door behind the officers. "No, don't shoot." The voice rang out, a child's, innocent and terrified. As the scene spiraled, a child's face filled with confusion and fear emerged from the shadows of chaos. The gunman's lost connection to everything he had fought for reappearing before him. What happens now? Jack thought, uncertainty crashing in like the echoes of sirens outside. Would the gunman reclaim his shattered heart, or would the cycle of despair continue? The moment hung in the air, each breath a fragile choice, with danger creeping ever closer. Jack's heart dropped as he saw the small figure standing in the doorway. The child, barely 10, with wide eyes and trembling lips, stood frozen, a deer caught in headlights. Time seemed to stretch infinitely as the air thickened with impending horror. "Mommy?" The little boy whimpered, glancing nervously at the gunman. His voice was a raw wound, slicing through the fragile thread of hope held by Jack and the others. "No!" Jack shouted, rushing forward, but the officers quickly blocked his path, eyes darting nervously between the child and the prone man. The gunman's gaze snapped to the boy, raw shock replacing the tears that had been building in his eyes. "Sam," he rasped, the syllable hanging in the air like a prayer. An unspoken connection dangled, quivering under the weight of betrayal and despair. "Daddy?" Sam's voice broke, filled with innocence and expectation. He took a tentative step forward, the horror of the situation washing over him, but the presence of his father held him in place. "Get back!" An officer yelled, but Jack could see that the gunman wasn't listening. His eyes locked onto his child with a fierce mixture of love and fear. Jack felt panic flare in his chest. "This isn't the way," he yelled, directing it at the gunman, desperate to pull him back from the brink. "This isn't who you are. Stay where you are." The officer shouted again, but the authority in his voice faltered. The gunman began to rise slightly, tension crackling like static electricity. The world outside faded into the background. It was just them now. "Daddy, please don't be scared," Sam said softly, his young face a mask of confusion, catching the eyes of the officers beside him. A couple of spectators behind the police line had begun to yell out, asking for calm, but their intentions fell on deaf ears. "I'm sorry, buddy," the gunman gasped, scrambling to his knees, eyes locked with Sam's. Jack could see a wave of realization crashing into the man, washing away the dark facade. "I didn't want it to be like this. I wanted to protect you." The boy's face scrunched in confusion, unable to comprehend the chaos that swirled around them. "Protect me from what?" "From everything," the man choked out, anguish slicing through his voice. "From all the mistakes I've made." Jack stepped forward again, but the officers held their ground, glancing nervously as though the air around them was charged with danger. "This is a chance. Don't let it go to waste. Put your hands on your head." An officer barked, starting to shift nervously, unsure of how to handle the unfolding situation. "Get down," Jack yelled in desperation, hands raised, willing the gunman to take one last step back, to remember the love he once felt. "Don't move," the officer yelled again, nerves fraying as he edged closer. "Dad," Sam whispered, tears beginning to stream down his innocent face. "I love you," the gunman cried, a mixture of regret and desperation spilling out. "I'm fighting for a better life for you." In that moment, everything reached a boiling point. The officer nearly squeezed the trigger, every person in the room bracing for chaos, hearts racing. Jack's pulse quickened. A plea escaped his lips, a last breath of hope. Just let him go. The energy in the room felt like a coiling snake, ready to strike. Then, unexpectedly, the gunman took one last shaky breath, and Jack could see it the flicker of hope amidst the despair. The man lowered his eyes, finally surrendering to the dialogue of his heart. But then the unexpected sirens outside blared louder, and a new urgency unfolded, escalating the tension to a breaking point. A flash of movement caught Jack's eye, and he realized someone was moving through the crowd behind the officers. Everything was about to change, but for good or ill. What new revelation lay in wait, threatening to tear apart the fragile piece they had just begun to stitch together? Jack braced himself for the fallout, feeling the world pivot, teetering on the edge of disaster. In the thickening silence, the sirens outside seemed to wail louder, echoing through the dimly lit corridor. Jack's heart raced, each thud matching the urgency of the blaring noise. He scanned the crowd again, desperation fueling his every thought. Who had just moved? Sam remained still, caught between the fear of what was unfolding and the love for his dad. The gunman's eyes shifted, frantic and unfocused as the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. Jack could feel a collective breath being held as the atmosphere thickened like fog, hazardous and heavy. "Please," Jack said, every word a lifeline, trying to reach across the chasm of fear that separated the man from his son. "Let us take a step back. No one needs to get hurt." The officer next to him hesitated, his hands shaking, the gun clutched tight. "We can get him out of this," he whispered, but his eyes never left the gunman's tense frame. The crowd pulsed with nerves, whispers rippling through like a shattered mirror, each person absorbing the weight of what might happen next. Sam's small face, a canvas of innocence marred by terror, turned back to his father. "Daddy, please come home." A flicker of light flashed behind the officers, drawing Jack's attention once more. A figure darted through the throng, discreet and determined. He couldn't see it clearly, but something about that movement sent a jolt through him. Was this a rescue, or was it part of the problem? Get down, barked an officer, and Jack felt the swell of panic surge within him. There were too many variables. What if the unknown came barging in like a whirlwind? Sam, you have to stay back, the gunman urged, his voice strained, every syllable dripping with desperation. Jack saw the man's fingers twitch slightly, inching near to the weapon, a clear sign that fear had taken the wheel again. What is happening? Sam asked, tears streaming down his cheeks, breaking Jack's heart all over again. The innocence of the child felt like a small rock in a raging river of chaos. Then, as if orchestrated by fate, the figure broke through, and the crowd gasped. She was a woman, breathless, eyes wide with urgency. Jack recognized her immediately. She was the gunman's estranged wife, who had been searching for a way to reach him. "Chris," she cried out, her voice laced with torment. "Please, we can talk. Let us just breathe, please." The gunman froze, eyes widening in disbelief. The world around them dimmed, leaving only the flickering moment suspended in time. Jack felt hope surge anew, but then dread. Too, would this bring a break or a massacre? The officers shuffled closer, nervous now, unsure of how to contain the burgeoning emotional storm. "Ma'am, step back," one shouted, but she faltered only momentarily. She took a risk, inching forward, hands raised in earnest. "It's me, Chris. Remember?" Her voice cracked, reaching for the embers of connection that time had tried to extinguish. "We can get through this. You're stronger than this." Jack held his breath, watching the gunman's expression twist in a storm of emotions: love, regret, confusion. Sam, standing there, became the anchor of the moment, the child's gaze pleading for both parents. Could they find their way back to each other? "Don't let him go," Jack whispered to the officer beside him, heart pounding, feeling the balance between catastrophe and salvation tilt. Time seemed frozen. Then the gunman's gaze darted back to Sam, so full of hope. And just as the silence threatened to tear them apart, something shifted in his stance. Then it happened, the final rupture that would change everything. What would Chris choose? Would he pull the trigger or drop it? The air grew thick again, heavy with unresolved tension, the crowd vibrating with anticipation. Jack braced for the unlikely outcome looming just within reach. As the tension spun out like clashing storms, Jack could feel the stakes climb higher than he ever thought possible. The gunman, Chris, teetered on the edge, a trembling figure wrapped in anguish and desperation. His eyes flickered from Sam's tear-streaked face to his estranged wife, desperation colliding with longing. "Let us step back, Chris," Jack urged, his heart racing. "You're not alone in this. Tell them what you need." Chris, breathless, shook his head slowly, confusion masking the pain twisted into his features. "I don't know how to stop this. It's a nightmare." The words spilled out, raw and broken. The crowd held its breath, a sea of faces reflecting anxiety. Jack darted another glance at Sam. "Stay back, buddy. Just trust me," he whispered, his voice breaking slightly. "Daddy." Sam's voice pierced the thick silence like a melodious cry for hope, reverberating in the heavy air. "Please don't hurt anyone." This moment, so small, yet monumental, collided against the backdrop of chaos erupting within Chris. The weight of his child's voice brought tears to his eyes. A flood poured down as he gasped, caught between the remnants of a past filled with memories and a wreckage of choices gone awry. "I just want to be a dad again," Chris whimpered, his grip on the gun faltering. Jack recognized that faint glimmer of humanity struggling beneath the surface. "Then let us make it happen," Jack said urgently, stepping slightly closer. "Put the weapon down. Your heart still beats for your family. Find your strength in love, not in fear." "Mommy, I'm scared," Sam cried, and just like that, the air shifted. The officers echoed Jack's plea, urging Chris to reconsider, but the flicker of humanity inside him held them all hostage, teetering on the brink of decision. "Chris," the wife said, desperate and unyielding, "you can't go on like this. This isn't the answer. We can mend our family. Just put it down." As those words landed heavy like bricks, something in Chris seemed to crack wide open. He stared into Sam's innocent eyes and saw himself staring back, not the monster he feared he'd become, but the father he longed to be. Jack inhaled deeply as Chris trembled. The choice was within reach. It hung on the delicate balance of every heartbeat, in a sudden, breathtaking moment. Chris dropped the gun, letting it clatter to the floor. Silence crashed down, but with it, an unbreakable connection forged from sheer relief washed over the room. Jack surged forward, his heart racing as he shouted, "Now, please, get on the ground, Chris." The officers moved in quickly, taking control of the situation, their eyes darting cautiously as they handcuffed Chris. But Jack remained where he was, reaching forward to hold Sam close, shielding him from the maelstrom of chaos just moments ago. "Mommy?" Sam whispered, small hands shaking. "Yes, love." His mother choked through a tide of tears, rushing to pull her child into an embrace that spoke volumes of the love they both shared. "It's going to be okay." Chris fell to his knees, eyes brimming with regret, glancing at Jack with an infinite weight of gratitude. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, and Jack nodded slowly, acknowledging the journey ahead. "Live, Chris," Jack said softly. "You have a second chance. Let it guide you home." As the officers led Chris out with his wife and son, there was a shift in the atmosphere. The tension melted into relief as onlookers exhaled long breaths they hadn't realized they were holding. "Thank you," Jack whispered, relief flooding through him as he turned to the manager, still shaken beside him. "Let us grab those sandwiches, shall we?" she replied through a wobbly grin. Jack chuckled, a sound of healing laughter echoing in the warmth of newfound hope. As they made their way towards the counter, the reality of the moment settled deep within them all. They had been enmeshed in chaos, yes, but together, they found a path back to love. The subway was more than a sanctuary that day. It became a testament to resilience and compassion. "Let us make sure this moment counts," Jack said, looking around at the community gathered. The laughter mingled with the scent of fresh bread, invigorating and bright. He knew this was a moment they would remember. The world outside seemed vibrant again. He caught a glimpse of Chris, now a vulnerable man searching for redemption, his own son cradled in the warmth of forgiveness. Today was the end of one story and the beginning of another. Now, as you've experienced this incredible journey with Jack, Chris, and Sam, don't stop here. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that grip your heart and mind. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. And let us hear your voice flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. What do you think will happen next? And wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how love and hope can conquer even the darkest moments. Support the channel, and let us keep these stories alive together.